This is Bob Baker with Jazz Guitar Today. We're here with Don Felder. Hey, Don, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. It's an absolute fabulously beautiful Southern California day. Blue skies, sunshine. It's about 78 outside, and just that's why we live in California because it's so nice here.
Oh, man. Well, I know you're from Florida, so you know what humidity is all about.
I was just down there. As a matter of fact, we dodged a bullet. We did, I think, three or four shows down there on this Brotherhood of Rock tour.
Hmm.
And we moved from there, I think, to Austin. And literally the day after we left, another big storm came in right behind us. And they were all outdoor venues we were playing. So,
You know, I used to fly small airplanes, and being in the South, Florida is the thunderstorm capital of the world. 90 thunderstorms a year, which is like nobody else gets even remotely close to that. 90. So every day in the afternoon in the summertime, thunderstorms
you get
pop up. So
that's it.
the humidity is crazy. So our weather here has been hot and humid and not nearly as pretty as I I love Southern California. You don't have to sell me on it. I spent a lot of time down on Manhattan Beach and hanging out there, and I just love it. So anyway,
Yeah.
I'm glad for the weather report. I appreciate that.
Well, my son was just down in Florida at a week's baseball camp, and it did exactly what you described. Every day between 3:30 and 5, a thunderstorm would come through. It
Yep.
would rain a little bit and then just move on. It was just,
But it happens every day like
yeah,
clockwork because the
that's right.
humidity builds up and all. But it's definitely humid here for sure. Anyway, listen. Well, first of all, thank you very much for doing this. It's an honor to talk with you. I've listened to you play since well, you're a little older than I am. We're not going to talk about exactly, but not many. I was born 2 or 3 years after you, so
Okay.
we're contemporaries in that regard. Um, and so we've been listening. There's a couple things. Obviously this is a jazz guitar magazine, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. But mostly, I want to talk about you and and how in the hell. I mean, the thing about your playing that is remarkable to me is you service the song better than anybody else on recordings. Your solos are always like, wow, that's interesting, that's new, that's different. Yet it's not flashy in the classical Eddie Van Halen thing, but it just nails the song. It just nails the song. And obviously, with Hotel California, the solo there, and I've really got to get some clarification on that. I mean, the two most iconic solos in all of rock and roll music are Stairway to Heaven and Hotel California. And I would say for my money, Hotel California is the better of the two. I mean, for me. So, and you're the author of that thing. Now, did you play the first half and Joe played the second half? And did you? Because I know that when you recorded that piece, you sort of had it all worked out, about 98% of it before you ever took it to the big studio, is from what I've gathered.
Yeah, I made a demo. Joe and I had been playing together in Joe Walsh and Friends, which was a band he put together. And we had done a lot of just jamming back and forth with each other. We did a thing, I think, for late night television for Joe Walsh and Friends. I sat in with him on that.
Yeah.
We opened for Elton John at Dodger Stadium out here with Joe Walsh and Friends. And we were doing a lot of that jamming with each other. So after he officially joined the band, I wanted to write something that we could do some of that stuff on
Right.
an Eagles record. And Glenn and I had done a little bit of it on Visions at the end of Visions. He and I traded solos, but it was somewhat limited for what we were doing. So when I came up with that idea for the basic track of Hotel, it was with plans to make something that Joe and I could play on together. So I did a demo of it where I played a 12-string guitar part all the way through. I picked up a bass, wrote the bass part, for it, the reggae part, the descending harmony lines in the verses. And when it got to the end, I said, well, I'd play something like this, and I'd play a part of it, and then Joe would play something like this, and I played a different guitar sound, and then I went back and forth simulating what Joe and I would do.
Right.
So I put it on a cassette with maybe 15 other song ideas.
Right.
One of them became Victim of Love. That one originally was called Mexican Reggae because it sounds like a Mexican reggae song, right?
I love
Uh,
it.
that was the working title for it, you know? And so then when Don actually wrote the lyrics with Glenn, and we had got it, we recorded it 3 times. First time it was in the wrong key. And Don went out to sing it. This first time we'd heard him sing anything on it. It sounded like Barry Gibb singing that really high falsetto voice. I went, that's wrong. It's the wrong key. So I
Yeah.
grabbed the guitar, went out in the studio, and that I originally wrote it in the key of E minor, which is a great guitar key, right, to play in.
Yeah.
I move it down to D minor. He says it's still too high. Move it down to C minor. Still too high. I move it down to A minor. He said that's a little bit too low. So we wound up playing it and recording it in B minor, which is not a particularly friendly guitar key. I don't know any other songs that are in B minor, but that's the song, the key that Don sounded best in. So we re-recorded the whole thing. That take and that key was different than the first take, and it just didn't turn out as well. So we went back in, recorded the whole basic track again. And then Joe and I thought we'd just go sit in the control room with 2 amps mic'd out in the studio and just do what we do, just jam off each other, you
Yeah.
know? So that's what we're doing in Criteria Studios. And Henley comes walking in and goes, what are you doing? We said, well, we're working out the guitar solos for the end. He says, no, you got to do it just like the demo. I went, I haven't heard that demo for a year, and I just made that stuff up. He says, no, you got to play it like the demo. So we're in Florida at Criteria. I
Yeah.
have to call home and have my housekeeper go over into my studio. There's a cassette there that's got a red star on it, right? It was a copy of what I'd made from. Get that cassette, bring it over into the kitchen, get a blaster, put the cassette in, play it, and hold up the phone to it. We recorded in Miami so I can relearn what I just made up as a spontaneous demo to illustrate that idea. And I would say probably half of what's on that solo at the end was pretty much identical to what was on the demo. Joe put his Joeisms in, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like when Slash came into my studio for American Rock and Roll, he came in and sat down and said, well, what do you want me to play? I said, I'm not going to tell you what to play. Just you be Slash. I want Slash on this record. I'm
Right.
not going to. But it was exactly the opposite for a hotel. It was like Henley wanted, he had been listening to it, you know, for a year,
Yeah.
writing lyrics to it, and he just wanted it as close to that as possible. So a lot of that was right off that demo.
Well, I gotta tell you, it's as I believe, it's one of the two probably most learned, most recorded, most familiar solos in all of rock history. I mean, I can't those two, Stairway to Heaven, obviously, and Hotel California. I mean, those are the two, and for my money, I'll go with Hotel California. I think it's I mean, knowing what we know about playing through changes, servicing the song, flashy guitar playing, and all the stuff that we talk about today. People say, "Well, that's really great, but there's too many notes in it, or that's all flat." I'm not hearing the song. I'm hearing this guy play a solo over changes that has nothing to do with the frickin' song. I'm not
Yeah,
hearing. It's not contributing to the song. It's if you're contributing to the song on stage, that's one thing, but you're not. You're taking the whole spotlight of the song and putting it on the guitar, which isn't what you're supposed. That's but and every one of your solos is not like that. I mean, that's what I absolutely totally admire about your playing. It's just like it's phenomenal. So we'll talk about that for a second because where where did where did that become part of you? How did you? Because in those days it was like Jimi Hendrix was just Just Made God, Eric Clapton. You know, it was a whole different vibe back then, and there was nobody doing at that level what you did. How did you come up with playing a rock solo? You know, but you got a lot of major pentatonic stuff in there. You know, and really just nail the song. Where did that come from?
Well, I have to say, I learned to phrase like a horn player. Uh, I got in a car in Gainesville and drove from Gainesville to New York City to see Miles Davis play with Herbie Hancock, Ron Carter, Wayne Shorter, and who was on drums? Tony Williams. Tony
Tony
Williams
Williams.
was 17.
Right.
And the band went on stage, but not Miles. The band's going.
Right.
Herbie Hancock is soloing, right? Wayne Shorter takes a
This
solo.
is like 1970, isn't it? Ish.
It's 1969, maybe
69.
68.
Okay.
68.
All right.
This is before Cream and before all that other stuff
Yeah.
exploded, right? So Miles walks up on stage, and it's at the Village Gate at the bottom of the gate. I don't know if you know that room or not. It's like a club.
Yeah.
So he walks on, he's got his back to his audience, and he's going, and he plays three notes. He goes, ba, ba, ba. And everybody just, whoa. He didn't go,
Yeah.
ba.
Right.
No, he hit you right here with what he played. And so I was just knocked out of my chair. To first, I'd heard him on records, but to see him live do that, and everybody improvising, whether it was Herbie Hancock, nobody's out there playing the note for note solo. They just letting it roll.
Right.
So I had taken music theory from a guy that had gone to Berkeley School of Music and opened up a music school in Gainesville. And for every incoming young guitar player that had blisters on his fingers and was complaining about how hard it was to play guitar and it hurt his fingers. For every hour that I taught guitar students for this guy, he would teach me composition and theory and harmonization and scoring and orchestration and stuff. And so we had a jazz band that we got to write charts for every week and then play your chart and you could hear what you'd, oh, that should have been an F sharp, and it's a G sharp, and this F sharp sticks out, right? So you got to learn just by experience and by living. And then when I was in this jazz fusion rock band called Flow,
Right.
and we moved to New York City, and we played the Fillmore East. It was somewhat like a rock band that had long extended solos in it, and then we had a chorus and verses. It was a song, but we had a lot of room to play. We had a great B3 player that also played soprano sax, not like Kenny G with a million notes per second, but just really more like Miles and soulful
Yeah.
musical things, music. And so
Right.
I learned to phrase from horn players. They can play, but they got to stop, take a breath, right? So
Right.
where they put that phrasing and that breath is really important to the melody to me.
Yeah.
So when we were sitting in the studio with one of these nights, and I got to make up a guitar solo for one of these nights, I say this doesn't sound like a rock shred track. It sounds more R&B.
Right.
And so I think, what would Dave Sanborn play? No, I'm sitting there thinking this really needs a sax solo, and if you listen to that solo, it
Yep.
is very much like a sax solo,
There's no doubt about it. There's no
and
doubt
it
about it.
it makes it very unique because it's a guitar sound playing a sax solo, and
Keep going. I knew it. I knew it. I did. I knew it. Keep
but
going.
the only time I ever shred is when I have documents in my office that needs to go not in the trash but in the shredder because that's about what it does to music when you shred. It just destroys the lyrics of the or the musicality of the solo. Yeah, and there's great brilliance and technique in Eddie Van Halen. Believe me, I respect Eddie. I've known Eddie, played golf with Eddie when he was alive, and it's a whole nother avenue of expression. What the way he played, but I also learned from Howard Roberts. HR is a dirty guitar player. I would listen to that stuff and learn that, and I had a bunch of jazz guitar books that I learned from how to voice chords and stuff. And so I just really love the improvisation part of music and developed that when I was starving on the streets in New York and got discovered by Creed Taylor.
I know
He
that.
heard us. He heard us at the Village Gate. I mean, at the Fillmore East, and signed us to a record deal the next week.
Yeah.
That jazz fusion band,
Yeah.
and so I loved the just the spontaneity. And as a matter of fact, I think that really helped me develop to walk into a studio, listen to a track, and just make up a solo. And
It's so funny you say that because, obviously that makes perfect sense to me that what you just described is exactly what I'm hearing. But you don't have that anywhere. I can't read that about you. I'm glad we did this in the interview because now it's out, that you, because I did a lot of homework on you. I know a little bit about you, and you can't find that. But I knew that I said, it's rock guitar tone, timbre, if you will, but it ain't rock guitar in the sense of what rock guitarists were doing in that day.
Correct.
And that's what I'm saying. And I mean, Creed Taylor had a hell. I mean, wasn't George Benson with him early in the early?
George Benson, Quincy Jones was
Yeah,
on the label when I was on
yeah.
it.
I was
Yeah,
trying to do a quick lookup of all the people that were. But if anybody, I mean, people are gonna know Creed Taylor and know that was a heavy duty jazz guy, and
yeah,
he was really famous for the musicians will tell you, you had to get your record done in like a day.
yeah. We did an album. We did a whole album in a day.
Yeah, you had to get your
And mixed it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. You had to get your record done in a day. There was none of this, one or two takes tops, and your next cut, next cut, next cut. So,
that's right.
because he wasn't screwing around,
Yeah.
He was getting, but oh man, that is so interesting. I'm so glad to hear that. So you had the band flow. You were in New York City doing that whole thing, and that's what informs your style. And I got nothing against shredding. I think it's a great sport. Um, I
to
don't.
me, to me, shredding is like talking to someone who only speaks Chinese and they're talking at 1,000 words a minute. You
Well,
can't understand anything. It's going by so fast. You can't hum it. You can't sing it. There was somebody that said if you want somebody to remember something,
right,
set it to a simple melody. Now,
right,
you can take a 2-year-old kid and teach them the alphabet with A, B, C, D, E, F, G. They don't know what an A is. They
right,
don't know what the alphabet is. But by
right.
the time they've sung that song 4 or 5 times, they've learned the alphabet. And they'll know that song and remember it for the rest of their life.
I got to tell you, you're singing not only not to the choir, but you're singing to another choir director here. You're preaching to a preacher because the great solos that we remember. Do we remember the cadenza part of it? The part of it. No, we remember the like in All Along the Watchtower. If you
Yeah,
if you listen to any of the great solos that you can play from anybody, what you hear is when they stop, take a breath, and play a melody.
right.
And then they do all the crap if that's what you want to hear. But the guitar players and the musicians that we remember and the solos remember are the ones that there's a melody in the solo that you just latch onto. We know immediately when the solo to Hotel comes up, you know that in two or three notes what that is.
Yeah,
Because
that's right.
I mean I
Yeah.
think almost anybody off the street could tell you what that is. So that's amazing. So, all right, let's talk about what's going on with you now. But man, I so appreciate what's the word we all use now? What you just shared with us. It was so nice.
Okay.
I so appreciate it because it's what like I said, we'll just say shredding to me is it's a physical sport. Nothing wrong with it,
Yeah,
because it's got its own competition. It's like the difference between being now these two things are going to, but being a weightlifter where the whole idea is to lift as much weight as you possibly can, play as many notes as you possibly can, and as many crazy ways, you know, or being a some kind of an athlete where you have to, like a basketball player that has to take the physicality and do something
sure.
with it. So
Yeah,
but it's its own sport. I mean, I'm calling it a sport because it's its own thing, and the guys that are great at it are it's incredible what they can do physically with the instrument. But what did BB King say? When you're talking to somebody, you don't want to be yelling at them all the time. You
that that's right. Yeah,
so
yeah.
so I appreciate that. I think that we all. I mean, melody is king. It just is. Melody is king.
Well, speaking of BB, I saw him live playing in a barn
Yeah.
in Gainesville, outside Gainesville, because there was an area of town, and excuse this expression, but they used to call it colored town.
No.
At, and it was just that part of town, and they were not allowed to have a liquor license in colored town.
Oh
So
well.
they had these parties outside of the city limits in this barn where a guy had a door down on a couple of bales of hay and some kegs of beer and a bunch of chairs set up. And BB King was playing there one night. And I got in a Jeep with somebody and drove through these cow pastures to get to the barn. And we stayed outside the door and looked in the window there into this barn, and I saw women crying, "Oh, BB, play it like it is! Oh my God!" And the soulfulness that he played was not shredding. It was like Miles Davis playing those first three notes that just had so much emotion in it that it hit you here. It didn't hit you up here in your brain going, "Oh my God, that guy can play a million notes." It hit you right here. And so I got my nerves up when he took a break and he went back and sat down on a bale of hay in the horse stall in the back of this barn. And I walked back there and told him how much I'd learned from him and loved listening to him on WLAC in Nashville, Tennessee at night. You could hear Albert King, you could hear BB King, you could hear Little Richard, and during the day, the radio station in Gainesville only played white music. And you'd hear Pat Boone singing Tutti Frutti. And then at night on WLAC, you'd hear Little Richard singing, and you'd go, "Wow, oh my
Oh.
God, that's the stuff," right? That unbelievable movement with that. So I just I learned a lot from watching people, not from shredding, not from fast, amazing technique, but just from get being able to deliver a feeling. That's really what music is all about.
I'm going to give you two quick stories. BB King. So I had a gig in California. I was living in New York at the time, or Georgia. I don't remember where I was because I've only lived in Buffalo, New York, where I'm from, and then Atlanta, where I've been living for the last since 1974. And I had a gig in California, and so I put all the equipment because back in those days. Anyway, we get to Las Vegas, and we go to the Hilton. And of course, we had no money, but we splurged. And Elvis Presley is at the Hilton, and that big sign that used to be out there in Vegas, it's all gone now. And BB King is in the lounge. Elvis was $15 to go to the main room, and BB was free if you bought a drink. Well, I would have paid $15 to go see BB. Elvis has never. I just. I mean, I appreciate what he did and all that kind of stuff, but I would rather go see BB King, even if I had to pay the $15 to go see BB King. So I go see BB in the lounge, and I'm like floored, and it's like now I gave her 10 kids, and now she wants to give them back. That's the first time I ever heard that line. It just cracked. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it cracked me up. And I went home and I called Art Cabrera's Music, which was in Buffalo, and I ordered a Walnut 355.
Wow.
And that was like I had to sell. This is a prosthesis, I mean, I had, it was like, but I had to have a Walnut 355 because that was BB was playing. That was before Lucille was Lucille.
Yeah.
And then I'll tell you this really, really quick. So Buffalo, New York, we had the white part of town, the black part of town. We colored it in the day, And Grant Green I was devouring Guitar Player magazine. I learned about Grant and all these players. Green's playing in town. Now I only knew about Grant Green through Guitar Player magazine. I said, well, I'm going to go out and see him. Right? Well, where is this place? I don't know. I'm going. I don't care. So I go there, and it's like what was the term in that James Bond movie, Cue Ball in Harlem? It's like I was like I think 17 or 18 years old, and I walk into this bar where he was playing, and I got like a front row seat. I was like right there, and there wasn't that many people there, to be honest. And right about showtime, he comes walking up, and he's got like a I don't know $10,000 suit on today. It was like he was like impeccably dressed, turned out, and he gets his guitar, and he looks over at me like, "What the are you doing here?" you know? I said, "Oh, Mr. Green, I'm just such an admirer of your music and all that kind of thing." So that's my hay bale story. And oh God, that was really really something. So the vault. Let's talk about the vault, if you don't mind.
No, glad to do it.
All right, so
Yeah.
you got a new record that came out on the 23rd or 25th, depending on which publication you listen to.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you talk about it, but it's 25, what, 25, 50 years. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
50 years of music. Yeah.
50 years of
Uh,
music. Where did I get
I, I developed a habit that's really led me to be able to collect and maintain thousands of musical ideas. When something comes through me, like, for example, I was just sitting on a couch playing acoustic guitar, and the progression, which is a chromatic descending progression, came through me for Hotel. I said, I have to go record a little bit of this because next day or 2 days later, I won't remember it. So no, really,
No,
I have to get,
I
I have to
understand.
get those things at the moment and record them. As a matter of fact, another song that's on this vault, a song called "I Like the Things You Do."
Hmm.
I'm on a treadmill at a gym. My girlfriend and I go to the gym all the time.
Yeah.
She's on a treadmill next to me in a very tight, provocative outfit. And I'm running in tempo like that. And I keep looking over at her and I go, I really like the things you do. I really like the things you do. And I get this idea for a song. So I pick up my phone and I start singing into my phone at the gym. And I look over at the guy next to me and he's looking at me like, what the fuck are you doing? Right? What the? You're singing into your phone?
What
What are
year?
you doing?
What year was this? What year was this?
Probably less than a year, about a year
Oh,
ago.
okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have to capture it, that moment.
Yeah.
So I went through five major fires when I lived in Malibu for 29 years. I
Right.
had friends of mine who lost their houses. I had friends of mine whose studios burned down. A friend of mine had this amazing collection of antique guitars and acoustic Martins and great Sunburst Les Pauls and old Fender 57
Oh,
Strats and just tons of stuff burned down to the ground.
right.
So after the last fire out there, which was, I decided in 2000 I was going to move because my number is going to come up sooner or later. I'm
Right.
out of here. So I sell the house. I take everything I've got, my recording studio, the big analog console, 24 track, two-track tapes, cassette, all this volume of audio tapes, and I just put it in storage in 2000. I move into Beverly Hills. I start looking for a place to buy. I find this house that I'm in now that I bought from Seal, who had built this studio room
Right.
in this house. I said, this is perfect. But instead of getting my old gear out of the locker, I decided to build a new digital studio with Pro Tools and all analog antique outboard gear, like
Right.
old Neve 1073 mic preamps and
Right.
1176 leveling amps. Not the plugins, the real
No, no.
deal.
Listen. I know. I was an audio professor. Long story, but yes, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, I got a bunch of old C12s and M49s and uh, just great old microphones, AKG mics, and all sorts of stuff that I've got. So I record the front end on that warm old classic sound, converted to digital 96K. So I go out to this locker where this stuff's been for 20 something years. I
Right.
said, I don't even know what's in this locker. I got to go take a look. So I go out there, open the door, and there's my console and tape machines and all that stuff. And I see this cardboard box in the middle of the room. It's got, it looks like it's got at least 100 cassettes, ADATs, CDs that I had just thrown everything in this box. I said, I don't even know what's in this box. I'm going to take this back to my studio and
Right.
sort it out. So we bring it back, and we decided that the tape being as old as it is, some of it back into the 70s,
Yeah.
is going to just slough off. So we've got one play.
Right.
So we set up transfer to go from a real high quality cassette machine right into Pro Tools into 96K. And we're transferring, my audio engineer is transferring this stuff, and I'm walking around getting a cup of coffee, and I hear this track. I go, I remember that idea. Damn, put a star by that one. And so I start sitting down and listening to these old demo ideas that
Right.
I had made back starting in 74.
Yeah.
One of the first demos I made for the Eagles, my friend Bernie Liddon said, if you want to write songs for the Eagles, don't write lyrics and don't write melody. Just write music beds, like introduction, first verse, second verse, chorus, third verse, chorus, solo, chorus, chorus, chorus out.
Right.
Song structure, but no lyrics, no vocals.
Right.
So I just start cranking these things out. And as I make them, some of them are great. I give to Henley and Fry along the way. And, they become songs like Hotel California or Victim of Love or Those Shoes or some albums down the line. But I had made so many of these unfinished song ideas. When I started hearing them, I went, wow, that was a great slide idea. I'm going to finish that. I did the demo in 1974. I
Right.
didn't have a set of drums. I took a cardboard box, mic'd it, and I played
Yep. Yep.
right for like 2 minutes. And I play a bass part and a rhythm guitar part, and then I start playing slide on top of it. And the slide part that I had written back then, I heard being transferred, and I went, put a star by that. So I go back and take probably 6 or 8 of these original old ideas that never finished, never were sung, and I rebuild them from ground up. New basic tracks, new drums. I have incredible people playing on this record with me. I have drummers like Jim Keltner playing on it, Greg Bissonette, Todd Zuckerman from Styx, Brian Tishy from Ozzy Osbourne, a bunch of different. Nathan East playing bass, Matt Bissonette from uh, Elton John's bands playing.
Who's playing the keys?
Well, I have several. I have David Page from Toto, and
Yeah.
I have Greg Gaines from everybody, including Clapton, to play
I
on. So,
know it. That's quite a Rolodex you have. I'm going, good
but
God.
it's all friends of mine that I've known, for
And
decades.
they know the recording process better than anybody on the planet. And the
That's right.
record is I think you used the term fucking before, which I speak that language. The record the record is recorded magnificently.
Wow.
There's not a I mean, it's like if you dig that thing, I mean, it is magnificent. I mean, the performances and the mixing and the tone qualities of everything that's going on, and the choices these guys made when they were playing. It's like holy shitski. It's a great record.
Well, it just started from those little dumb demo ideas that I'd made, decades ago. And so there's some from the 70s, some from the 80s, some from the 90s. Finally, in the 2000s, I got a couple of things in there. Let Me Down Easy was 2001.
Right.
And I recorded the whole thing and built it up. And actually, it was a great track, but it was too high for me to sing in. So I brought in this gal to sing on it. That was just fantastic. And
Nina.
Nina Winter.
Nine is
That's
it
right.
Nina or
Yeah.
Nina? Nina or
Nina.
Nina.
Nina. Yeah. So, and I never thought I would, have another singer guest on it, but
Let me back you up on that one a little bit because
yeah,
that vocal performance is crazy.
yeah.
It is so It is so freaking good. And you know what? It was genius of you to put that on the record because it's like another color, another flavor all of a sudden. And
Yeah.
it's like a palate cleanser almost for some of the other stuff. You know what I'm saying? And,
Yeah.
and,
Well,
and she's magnificent on it.
the only thing I saved was that demo. I had made the demo track, and she came in and sang on it. She was singing on some other background demos I was doing. And then, so when I heard it being transferred, I
Go ahead.
went, wait a minute, that's a great vocal. So I took that vocal and rebuilt the entire track underneath it again with Phil Gaines and Nathan East and Jim Keltner and that band, and made the track just spectacular around that vocal
So the
performance.
tail wagged the dog.
That's right.
Oh, you would never know that.
Yeah,
I mean, it sounds like she's like right there feeling the band, as she's, emoting. It's
yeah,
a phenomenal piece of I mean that's because you guys, you and your friends who have so much recording experience at the highest level, uh, know how to do that shit.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's just after years and years and years of making records in the Eagles, first of all.
Right.
And this is, do you know what there was before Pro Tools?
Well, yeah, but
With, I mean, with like, being able to auto tune and time correct and all that stuff. You know what there was before there was any of that?
well, we used to slice tape.
There were pros that could sing and write and play.
Well, yeah. That's that's
So,
why now you see we're of the same age group, and now you're. I mean, I studied classical voice. I was a classical voice major when in the '70s, and I studied jazz guitar in school, and I studied all this shit. And when I hear singers that I know can sing, it's such a breath of fresh air. When
yeah,
you hear a real singer and the intonation is great, the placement in the face is amazing, the breath control is all there, and
yeah,
yet you don't know that there's technique being employed.
yeah,
When you
yeah,
hear somebody that's really, really good, the technique doesn't, you don't think about, well, that vibrato on this note here is just like, you just know that, wow, that sounds good.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. So anyway, making all the records with the Eagles, there is not a voice, a single note on any vocal track that's out of tune. If it was out of tune, we re-sang it. We punched in. You couldn't auto tune it, so we just
no,
pounded ourselves into every guitar notes in tune. On the solos, everything was had such a microscope on perfection. As a matter of fact, I think some of the stuff when you put perfection as your main priority, a lot of times you can kill the fire and the
right,
feeling in the
right, right, right,
performance.
right, right.
Like a lot of times, the first time I come out of a solo and start playing it, it might have something a little out of tune here and there, but the fire, the
Right.
enthusiasm, the
Yeah.
spontaneity, the energy that's in that
Yeah, the
is
the organic thing, it's there.
that's right. That's right. But with the Eagles, then everything would have been corrected perfectly. So once you get that discipline in your head and you start hearing guitars that are doubling each other and they're a little out of tune. As a matter of fact, I made this record with the Bee Gees. They had me work on a guitar slave, and I played 16 guitar tracks in perfect unison. I mean, every note and every line of 16 of them had to be
Was it
not time,
single note step or was it chordal or what was it?
single note stuff.
Oh, 16 what
16 identical. And the reason was Barry Gibb would go out and sing on a mic, and the first track he sang would be great, but it just sounded thin. It was like one.
right.
So he would go out and sing 6 times identical tracks. The vibratos would all be in sync with each other. The notes would be perfectly in tune with it. It was phenomenal. And that, if you listen to it, you think it sounds like one voice, but it's really 6 guys, 6 of him singing in perfect unison. He developed this thing called elephant pianos. He had this big black 12-foot grand piano in the studio. And we had this guy named George Bitzer who was a blind, just genius on keyboards. He would sit around and go, "Ba-da-da-da-da," on the stereo mic piano, and he'd do that like four times. And when the piano came in, it sounded like an elephant going, "Ba-da-da-da-da," even though it was unison. It was just so big. So
Yeah.
Barry loved multiple exact duplicates. So we did it over and over and over and over and over until it was great.
That's well. Let me back up just a little bit because there is a video of Glenn being a choir director with the Eagles, working on the vocal, and where you see him being, I mean, his all of his mannerisms were that exactly what, having been a voice major, I would been around a couple of choir directors, chorus directors, and you guys, he would be as disciplined about that as any university director that I was ever around. I mean,
Yeah,
and I went, holy shit, no wonder that stuff sounds so good. I was
yeah,
I was probably as impressed with that as anything I've ever seen. The fact that these guys wearing the same kind of clothes that I would normally wear, which was like, t-shirts, jeans, and a flannel shirt, playing the, Martin, whatever at the time, and like playing G, C, and D,
yeah.
but they're taking it to that level that it's mind-boggling. Then to hear you amplify the story with talking about how you play all that's no wonder it
Well,
sounds the way it does.
the other thing that was remarkable about those records is we recorded all the background vocals with one microphone.
Yeah,
And Randy singing the high part had this really piercing, beautiful high part, would be 3.5 feet away.
right, to get
And
the mix.
whoever was, yeah, so people were blended by how far from the microphone they were
Old school
until,
bluegrass.
yeah, that's right. And it just, it wasn't double tracked, it wasn't triple tracked, it wasn't quadruple tracked, it wasn't a Barry Gibb more is
Right.
better. It was, if once you have it perfect and the right balance, it just, there's a thing. As a matter of fact, they would sing this one area, and I would sit in the control room and listen to it, and there was an oscillation of a, I don't know if it was a harmonic that blended together, but it was a different note that none of them were singing. It was whenever those voices came together, there was this one odd tone that was there. And I kept saying, "Play that back again. I got to hear that." And sure enough, we went through and tried to solo if there were multiple
Right.
takes of it, and it was in every take. So it was like just something that happened in that blend of those voices at the right balance.
We'll have to get some physicists to explain that to us. I mean,
Okay.
it's pretty phenomenal. So this record, I mean, I want to bring you back to this record. Um, you 50 years of music, recorded with the the best musicians on the planet for this style, for sure. I mean, these guys are certainly the names that we all know that have been on thousands of recordings. And I mean, just listen to any of the Toto records. It's like mind-boggling. Of course, Nathan East and I mean, all the names that we've already talked about. I'm gonna leave somebody out if I know. And it's a phenomenal, phenomenal record. And so you're also on this Gigunda tour. I mean, you guys are freaking everywhere.
Yep.
Let me see if I can pull this up just to give people. I've got it pulled up. I just got to. There we go. Okay. Well, you started on May the 25th. So you're gigging. I'm going to talk about just the dates: the 25th, 26th, the 28th, the 30th, 31st, 2nd, 4th, 6th, 9, 11, 13, 14, and 15 of June. So then you take a couple weeks off. And then you start back up on July 2nd, 3rd, 6th, 8, 9, 11, 12, 14, 18. So you were, now we're in June obviously now, but so you got Texas, Colorado, Utah, Concord, California you're going to be in. You're going to be in Bend, Oregon. You're going to be in Washington State. Then you go to Kansas and Illinois. You're going to be here Alpharetta Amphitheater, which I may come and I think I'm going to come to that show actually. Um, and then I mean you're all over the frickin' place. So tell us about the tour. I mean we know that it's with some other luminaries. You want to talk about the tour a little bit?
Sure. I have known Tommy Shaw and the Guy in the Sticks for decades. I've known Kevin Croner since the 70s when REO, and we have toured starting back, I think, in 2012. Uh, Sticks and I touring either with Kevin and REO or with Foreigner or the Doobie Brothers or somebody, you know.
Right, yeah.
So I really love the creative process in the studio to be able to go in and make stuff happen,
Right.
just write, record, produce. But I also like walking out on stage and playing live for people. That energy that I get out of that is just, it's as great as making a great solo that just came out perfect in the studio and you go, yeah. But when you go out on stage, you want to be able to just, have that feeling shared with the entire audience.
Well, it's the full circle feedback.
Yeah, I don't do this. I've never done this for money, to tell you the truth. That's why I was willing to starve on the streets in New York City to learn to play jazz and do that record and learn to improvise. I've been obsessed with music since I was 10 years old. And I'm very, very fortunate to have had the success and the financial wherewithal to be able to do this for a living. And but I would be happy playing in a bar and having a great band with me. Just enjoyed it. There you go.
There are one, two, three, four, five, six guitars within about 10 feet of me. I
Well,
tell
let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 if you count the double neck as two. So
okay.
I've got 15 just in my control room
Well,
here.
and I have had a guitar in my hands. I could probably count on two hands all of the days since I was about 14 or 15 years old that I did not have a guitar in my hands sometime
Ah,
that day.
yeah,
I still play for hours, every day.
yeah, yeah,
Um, Whether I'm watching the TV or I'm doing something else or whatever, or it just figuring out a new lick, or whatever it is.
yeah,
So that obsession or whatever you want to call it, it's not an obsession. It's just is. I don't know what you call
yeah,
it, but
yeah.
but when you say that to me, you're talking to someone that speaks that language. I mean, I broke my neck in a mountain bike accident. I used to race mountain bike, and when I woke up, I told my daughter who was there, I said, "Would you go get me a guitar?" And so because I couldn't move my hands, and I all of a sudden I just made a D chord, and I
Uh-huh.
just started like while I was still in the hospital, and then I had a real bad health issue a year and a half ago, where I was in the hospital for a week or two, and I made my friend go get my telly and bring it in. So there I am in the hospital bed, with shit everywhere, but I got my hands around it. So I fully understand that, being it's not an addiction, it's something else. It's not an
Yeah.
obsession. It's just
I think other than my family and my kids and grandkids and great grandkids, it's the thing that brings me the most joy and satisfaction in life, to
I
tell you the
would
truth.
I,
My philosophy is I'm just going to rock till I drop. Hopefully,
oh,
it'll be in the middle of a hotel solo of, but I just can't think of anything I would rather be doing with my life than music. I've, I've just been fortunate enough
I
to be able to do that.
I don't even the notion of not playing is so foreign to me. It's like not being able to breathe.
Yeah,
When I traveled all those years doing what I was doing professionally and all that, I always took a guitar with me.
yeah,
Always, you know.
yeah.
So I think the soft shell case was invented for me so I could get it up, on the air and always had a guitar everywhere I went. And
Yeah,
I would go back to the room after being at the NAMM show because I was involved in that end of the business. And I would play. Of course, I would play while I was there, but
Yeah.
it's just part of the deal. So um, I so get it. I really do. And I so admire. And here's the thing that this is why I know this about you. This is how I know this about you. It's not from anything that I read or rumor or anything like that. There's some videos of you playing on stage. And you walk out on the stage, and in this particular video, it's the full show, but there's several videos of you playing live, and you got Sunburst Les Paul in your hands, Cherry Wash, which is my favorite. It's like if I, that's the one I love, um, and the the level to which you are connected to that. And the playing, the singing, even when you take your hands and drop them and go to the microphone and sing, you're still connected to that whole thing. There's the comfort level and connection that you have with your music is so apparent to I hope probably everybody, but it's so apparent to me. It's like, I mean, I just love it. I don't know how to explain it. I just think it's phenomenal. So, I just thought I would share that with you. Your stage presence is one of a guy who's done it a lot, at a very high level in front of a lot of people, and you're very comfortable with yourself. Your playing is, live. When I do interviews with people, particularly in I said, listen, don't send me your recordings. I don't want your recordings. Don't send me anything. Let me see your video of you performing live. That's what I want to see. I don't want it because in modern recording, 29 takes is not necessary anymore because we're gonna move this note here and that note there and all this kind of thing.
Correct. Right.
I don't want to think about the grid. I want to
Yeah.
see if you're connected to the musicians, like what we were talking about earlier. I want to see how do you, how are you connected soul, how is your soul connected to what you're doing? And are you connecting with others who are the people that are around you? Are you respecting them? Are they respect, all the stuff that's going on. And that's kind of where it's at. So when I see, what you're doing, I just go, yeah, all right, I get it. So, um,
Well, I used to go in Gainesville on Saturday. They had the State Theater had a Saturday kids matinee. I think it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon or something. But before that, starting at 1 o'clock, they had a talent contest every Saturday. I would go down every Saturday with a guitar and a little amp and get up on stage by myself and just play and sing and do my thing.
how
And
old were
people
you?
would go, probably 11 or 12.
Oh man, I love that.
And people would say, "Aren't you nervous?" I go, "Why? Oh, what am I? What's there to be afraid of? You just get up and play music for people." And I've never really had a fear. The only time I've really been really nervous about stepping on stage and playing was I had the honor of having my white double note hanging in the Metropolitan Museum of Art with a show that was called Play It Loud. And it was the history of the most famous guitars in rock history.
Oh
They
wow.
had Jimi Hendrix guitar from Woodstock. They had Jimmy Page's double neck. They had Clapton's Blackie. They had all of these famous Elvis Presley guitars. They had the Everly Brothers, all of these amazing guitars that they got out of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame on display at the Met. And so they asked me if I would come and be there for the opening. And I went, sure, I'd love to do that. It's an honor to be hanging in the Met.
Yeah.
So they said, well, tomorrow we're going to have a press conference. There'll be a couple of hundred people from the press here. Would you mind coming out and playing Hotel? And I had a track that I, just play with, minus my voice and the guitar and the 12 string. So I said, sure, I'll do that. So there was this tiny little stage set up in this room, and there were about 200 people in the room from Wall Street Journal, from all the news press, and everybody, video cameras at the back, and all these writers and people recording, but sitting right in the front row, right at my feet of this little stage, was Jimmy Page.
Oh,
And I walked out and I went, "Oh
Oh.
God, please don't let me screw this up."
I thought you
He'll
were going to
know.
tell. I thought you were going to tell me Barack Obama or something like that.
No. Yeah. So Jimmy Page is sitting right at my feet. And, I've got a little amp that I'm playing through in this track. And I play the last verse and sing it for Hotel, and then the solo's out. It's kind of a truncated version of it. And so, I've never been afraid of the press, obviously, but I was petrified that I was going to mess up. And for every night for the rest of my life, I'd roll in the middle of the night. Oh my God, I'll never forget this, that I screwed up in front of Jimmy Page. But so I get off stage, and I'd never met him, and he was the nicest, kindest guy. We've become friends since then. But
Yeah.
it's the only time I've ever really been afraid to walk out on stage and see that guy sitting there.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you,
Thanks.
man.
Okay. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.